Hi everyone and welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving into one of the most powerful tools in the service design toolkit, and that's the Stakeholder Map. Now, whether you're working in a large organization, a government body, or even a small business, understanding the ecosystem of people involved in delivering and receiving your service is absolutely critical. And what better way to illustrate this than with an example that everybody loves and nearly everyone has probably used, and that's a bakery. So let's jump straight in and talk about, well, what is a Stakeholder Map? If you're working in the worlds of user experience or service design or CX, or even just product design, you've probably heard the term Stakeholder Map. Simply put, it's a visual representation of all the people, the groups, even the entities involved in or impacted by a service. Now, this tool really helps us align and helps us design better experiences because it lets us to see who's part of the system, what their roles are, and how they interact with one another. And this is absolutely critical if you're trying to evoke change within an organization, which we like to refer to as an ecosystem when we're talking about stakeholder maps. So why is this important? Well, because understanding these dynamics really helps you identify the gaps, the bottlenecks, the opportunities for improvement in your service. And if you fail to do this, you really put yourself up against the wall, and it's much more difficult to evoke that change that we so desperately want to achieve. So let's look at, I'm going to be going through and giving you an example and building out this stakeholder map with you so you can really get a better understanding of what I'm talking about here. So let's bring this concept to life. So with the bakery as an example, imagine you own a small bakery, okay, in your local town. I'm in Dublin, so let's just say it's in the city centre of Dublin where there's lots of people passing by. At first glance, it might seem like it's just you or your team and the customers, but as we dig deeper, you'll see that there's a web of stakeholders. It's much bigger. So let's start to map this out. All right, so we're going to start off by setting up the stakeholder map. So here we've got using Jot here by Espresso, which is a fantastic tool if you're looking just to get started. You don't need a big fancy template for getting going on a stakeholder map. We're just going to draw by placing one circle there in the middle, okay? Now, when you start thinking about the people who are involved with a stakeholder map, you can quickly assume that there's going to be the people. So the customer is going to be at the center of this, but who else might be involved? So we might kind of go baker, okay? We're going to think about the person taking the money, so the cashier. We'll put the cashier in here. So he takes the money, and then we start to run into these areas where we're like, I think that's probably it. We've got the customer, we've got a baker. But let's flesh this out a little bit more, okay? So now we go and we're going to put one layer of more complexity in here. Who is the most important person when you're designing these experiences? Now, if we don't have any customers, we are going to struggle to make money where the service is going to fall apart. But let's say, for argument's sake, and it is true, the customer is the most important person in this scenario. I like to play role-playing whenever I'm doing this. I like to role-play the scenario of the customer's experience. Now, this is a good example if you've also done some journey mapping work. You have to bring that journey map and play back that experience and what it looks like and who they've interfaced with in their experience. So as the customer is at the middle of this experience, say the customer walks into the bakery shop, who do they see first? Most likely they're going to see somebody standing behind a counter and they give the order to that person. Is this the same as the cashier? It could be, but in this scenario we're going to say it's not. I don't like that font, but I'll use it anyway. So we're going to go and we'll put this in here and we'll call it the reception. Yes, the reception person. Boom, reception. And I can't spell, but you get my point. Okay, so there's a person there that really interfaces with the customer when they walk in, okay? After that, they take the order from the person and they help them maybe get sorted. And we're going to select a bread, and at that point we ask the questions of like, well, where are they getting the bread from? What part of the shop? Who makes that bread? And it's going to be the baker, okay? So slowly but surely we can see that we're starting to build out a more of a context of who's involved. There's a cashier there as well. Bring the cashier, move it over here. Now, when we start thinking about the bakery experience, we see that there's a person here. We'll call them sales, actually. So we'll call them sales. Doesn't have to be anything particular here. So just go salesperson. Right. Without the salesperson, would this service fail? Probably not, okay, because the people might be able to access the bread off the shelves themselves, but will they be able to get bread if the baker's not in? That experience tells me that the customer is going to speak to the salesperson. So there's a relationship here. And then that salesperson is able to get the product that the baker bakes. So they make a bread, they give it to the salesperson gives it to the customer. Okay. Now, at that point, the customer then needs to go and give the cashier some money, and the cashier will then approve the sale and gives them the bread. Okay, so the slice of bread. Yes, folks, that is bread. Now, also, we're start thinking about, well, what other things are involved in a stakeholder map? Well, they're not going to be able to do this potentially if they don't have an oven. Okay, so the oven is really important. It is a thing that is being supplied to them, and they most likely got this money from, say, somebody over here that provides that experience. That might be the bank manager. Okay, so the bank manager is really important because it gives them the capital to open up this shop, and it's super important. But if the manager rings in sick one day, will the service fall apart? No, not unless they're releasing the funds to buy the shop initially. If the oven stops working, will the service fall apart? Yes. So when you start asking yourself these questions, you're able to determine and start designing for service failure, which is a critical aspect of the service design mindset that I'm always talking about. So we need to consider this. If you're designing this business for yourself, what's the contingency? What happens if the oven fails? So maybe you might need to have two ovens in this case, two ovens on the go. So if one oven breaks, then the other one can keep the shop going until the other one is repaired. So looking at this overall experience, there's lots of other people more involved. So where does the baker get the stuff that is required to make that bread? Now, when we start thinking about this here, we're looking beyond the ecosystem. So they need flour to be produced, and that is most likely going to be produced by a person by the name of a farmer. And the farmer is really, really important, okay? Because if the farmer is mistreated, which is currently happening all over the world, they're finding it very, very difficult to make money. They can go out of business, and then as a result, the commodity of wheat and flour, everything goes through the roof. So we need to think about those things. So using this as an example, we can see that we're able to start mapping out the experience. So the farmer gives the baker flour, and the baker gives the farmer money. So this here is going to be a bag of flour. Now, why this is really important when you're laying this out, because too often projects get sparked up and they're just thought of as digital projects that are going to, radically change the customer experience. And they might take into consideration only one aspect that they might actually take into consideration of just the customer and the salesperson. Okay. But you can see if we change this experience for the salesperson, sure, it might make it easier for the customer, but what effect will that have as a knock-on effect throughout the overall ecosystem? So these are the really important people within the process. So like the baker should probably be in here as well. But generally speaking, we're able to start thinking about where the value we can bring to the overall ecosystem. Too often projects only consider two stakeholders, but you can see if you're changing the relationship between the salesperson and the customer, you're more than likely going to be changing the dynamics between the customer and the cashier. So as a result, we need to start thinking about what the relationships are between these two people as well. It's unlikely in this scenario that if you're designing a new application or a website or something that's going to benefit the customer and the salesperson, that it's going to have an effect on the bank manager over here or even the farmer. That's not to say we don't consider it. Maybe they need to be involved, and maybe there's new things that you can actually think about that can benefit both the bank manager and the farmer by doing this application. Maybe the farmer can see the analytics of how many sales are currently happening in the store, so they can then use that to forecast future earnings and potential to grow more wheat for the following year. So you can start thinking at the overall ecosystem level. That's why it's really important to think about the suppliers, the delivery service, and the regulators. And it's too often overlooked when you're looking within the ecosystem, and it's what we need to try and do more of when we're thinking at a service design level. So how does this really help service designers? Well, once we've mapped out all of the stakeholders, we can really start asking ourselves the critical questions. Are there any blind spots in this overall system? And are there opportunities for collaboration that we've not tapped into? And are there any conflicts between these stakeholders that really need to be addressed? That's it for today's folks in stakeholder mapping. If you'd like to learn more about this, I do have a course that's linked to in the description below. And I hope this gives you a clear understanding of how powerful this tool can be within the service design or even the design process. Now, if you found this useful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with anyone who might benefit. And if you've got a question or any ideas for future videos, please drop them below in the comments. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.